Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 1503-1503. Today we have part 2 of Comrade Richard D. Wolff. Hey, I tease him, but I like this guy. I think he's got some good points. The Marxist professor. And hey, did it move the needle yesterday? Did you become a Marxist? I doubt I have any Marxists listening to this show, but maybe one or two. You're always out there, right? You're always out there reading your copy of the Daily Worker and plotting for the communist takeover of the free world. So here we go. We'll get into that in a moment. But first, we have an important update about homebuyer demand. And one of the ways that you can assess a lot of the homebuyer demand is simply by looking at the number of mortgage applications. So let's talk to one of my favorite reporters, Diana Olick with CNBC, and hear what she has to say about this.
So let's get to breaking news on the housing market. Diana Olick has the latest report on mortgage applications. Hey, Diana.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, after a brief pullback at the end of June, homebuyers rushed back into the mortgage market last week, taking advantage of yet another record low mortgage rate. Mortgage applications to purchase a home rose 5% for the week, but were a remarkable 33% higher than the same week 1 year ago. And that's according to the Mortgage Bankers Association's seasonally adjusted index. And another adjustment was made to account for the July 4th holiday. Now, the average rate on the 30-year fixed fell to 3.26% from 3.29 for loans, 20% down.
Wow.
Home prices are continuing to heat up given the very tight supply of homes for sale. And we saw that in the average purchase loan size. It increased to $365,700. That is another record high. Now, applications to refinance a home loan, which are generally more sensitive to weekly interest rate moves, they rose just 0.4% from the previous week, but were 111% higher than the same week 1 year ago. Refi demand has been so strong for so long, and interest rates have been as well. So there are now a limited number of borrowers left who could benefit significantly from even that new record low rate. It seems though like we're getting another record low mortgage rate every week, Becky.
Now, of course, we've talked about how we have the lowest interest rates in over 3,000 years. I'm assuming the records that they kept 3,000 years ago were not as good as the records today, but, we'll just take their word for it. The rates are pretty darn low. So what Diana Olick was talking about there was very prescient based on what's going on today. But note, the number she mentioned, that $365,000 number, that was the loan amount, not the house price. So if they're putting 10% down or 20% down, remember that's just 90% of the price of the house or 80% of the price of the house, as the case may be. So it's pretty amazing. And doesn't that make the properties that you are buying through our network that you're finding at jasonhartman.com/properties, doesn't that make those prices seem just totally amazing? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So we've got one, maybe two more announcements to get to before we get to our guest today. But first, I wanted to play a clip from one of our Meet the Masters speakers, and that is my friend George Gammon, who, by the way, is going to be in Florida this weekend, and I'm going to be hanging out with him, and we'll be talking about some big ideas for you. He got a flight out of Colombia, which is amazing. He said that was really, really hard to do. So here he is, and he's going to give you a little educational preview about the upcoming Meet the Masters talk. You've heard him on the show before, and it's my pleasure to welcome George Gammon back just for a brief discussion of what he is going to talk about at our upcoming Meet the Masters of Income Property conference. This is the first time we've done it virtually. It's our 22nd anniversary event. And George, we are so excited to have you. Tell us what you are going to be sharing with our attendees.
Well, I just can't wait, first and foremost, Jason, to get there and share, hopefully, what's going to be some knowledge bombs and some serious value with your listeners, with your viewers, of the people that are going to attend this virtual conference. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is something that nobody understands. And I think it's just going to blow people's mind. And that is in the most recent tax bill that came out in 2018, the tax bill that we thought lowered people's taxes actually is going to increase people's taxes substantially over the long run. So how is this going to happen? Because they switched the CPI measurement, and that's the rate of inflation for the tax brackets. So if they increase the tax brackets too slowly, in other words, they use a rate of inflation that understates the CPI dramatically, then the tax brackets will move up slower. That means you are going to pay more and more of your income to the government over time. And I won't go into great detail, but trust me, this is something that everyone is going to want to find out about. Take notes so you can prepare in the future so you're not getting ripped off by the government.
George, that is fantastic. I saw you talk a little bit about this before with your famous whiteboard, and you're great with the whiteboard for sure. That is a super important topic, and it is amazing the kind of really sleight of hand that the government plays with the IRS, with monetary policy, with fiscal policy. It's just incredible. And it's so important that people understand this, isn't it?
It absolutely is, because as real estate investors, we can take advantage of certain tax opportunities. We've got depreciation. I mean, you go into this in a lot of your videos, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it more at Meet the Masters. But we're going into an environment in the United States where taxes are going to increase. I can almost promise you that, whether it's corporate taxes, whether it's income taxes, or maybe capital gains tax. So you need to be cognizant of what's going on, because you've got two options right now going into the future. You can either be prepared or you can be a victim.
Yeah.
And personally, I'd rather be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can't wait to have you. And it's your first time speaking at Meet the Masters. We originally, folks, had this scheduled as a live conference. It will be live now, but it's virtual. But it was going to be an in-person physical conference, I guess I should say, in Southern California. And then we postponed that and turned it into a virtual event. So here we are, George. We can't wait to have you. And thank you again for joining us. And I'm sure the audience is just going to be really looking forward to what you have to say. So thanks again.
All right, buddy. Well, I can't wait to see you and everyone else July 31st, August 1st, and August 2nd. We'll see you there.
You got it. Looking forward to it. So I hope you are excited about our upcoming Meet the Masters. And I know you are, because a lot of you have been buying tickets like crazy. This virtual conference makes it a whole lot easier than a physical conference. So very excited about our 22nd anniversary. This is the 22nd time we've done this event, but the first time we've done it virtually. And we've just been getting all our technology in order to make this a real pleasure for you. And I think it is going to be just that. Of course, we announced Sharon Lechter to the speaking roster yesterday, and we have a big new announcement. But you know what? I'm going to make you wait for it. It's a famous person, and it is a great real estate mentor. We'll announce that one probably on Monday, okay? So just wait for it. Wait for it. You'll love it. You'll be very happy. Don't worry about that one. And this one was just confirmed yesterday, but I just got to work out a few details and make sure the time and date work for the mystery speaker that you're going to love that we'll announce on Monday. Oh, by the way, early bird pricing ends, I believe it ends tomorrow night, Friday night. So get your tickets quickly, jasonhartman.com/masters. Then we'll go to the second early bird level. So it'll be a little bit more. And then there'll be one more level of early bird before the event. So we have been talking a lot about current events and what's going on in the world. And two things I want to share with you before we get to our guest. And we do part 2 of Marxism. And one is that this crazy, crazy world we live in, this woke world where the hypocrisy just rains down on anybody with any degree of intellectual honesty. It is raining cats and dogs of hypocritical, self-interested stupidity. And here is yet another example of so many. Well, you've heard of the band Lady Antebellum, and they decided that suddenly their name of their band was somehow not woke enough. I guess it was just too racist. So they had to change the name of their band. So they changed the name to Lady A. That is the name of the band. And they tried to work out a deal because that name was actually taken. They tried to work out a deal with another African-American performer who already was using that name herself. She called herself Lady A. And I guess the woke hypocrite scumbags at Lady Antebellum didn't like that they weren't able to be woke enough and get full clearance to use the name Lady A, okay, because they're a bunch of leftist virtue signaling fakes. And so, even though I do like a couple of their songs, so good job, Lady A or Antebellum or whatever your name is. I bet the courts are going to side Lady A is not available to you. But guess what they did? They are now suing the poor African-American lady who already owns the name. So here is a tweet I'm looking at. Lady Antebellum decided to change their name to Lady A because they're woke now, only to find out that a black artist already existed under that name. So now they're suing to use the name anyway because they couldn't come to a deal with her. Leftist virtue signaling in a nutshell. Unbelievable. That is truly unbelievable. I think we should start a legal fund for the original owner of the name Lady A, the African-American performer, and help her fight this battle with the bullies, Lady Antebellum, to keep her rightful name. That's like another form of police brutality. It's intellectual property brutality. That's exactly what they're doing. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Maybe she'll start a GoFundMe campaign and we can all donate money to her because, boy, I feel sorry for her that the woke virtue signalers just, they want to steal her name. It's unbelievable. And, they might get away with it because they have way more money than she does, I'm sure. They're a famous band with, many big hits. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the mass migration to the suburbs, the burbs, and it is continuing. But guess what? The real estate firm, Cushman & Wakefield, you've probably heard of this firm. They're a big deal. They've been around a long time. I think ever since my career started, probably way before that. Hey, I've been doing this a while. In fact, over 3 decades. So that's a long time. They say in this article at globestreet.com that the newfound interest in the suburbs is not so new. Since 2016, the gap in cost between, get this, CBD, I'll get to that in a moment, and suburban office, meaning office space for, renting office space, has receded from a high of 68%, according to Cushman & Wakefield. Now, this is just a sideline, but I really get annoyed. Well, what don't I get annoyed about? I get annoyed about everything. I get annoyed about leaf blowers. I get annoyed about Wall Street criminals. I get annoyed about real estate criminals. I get annoyed about woke Lady Antebellum scams where they're bullying people around with lawsuits. I get annoyed by all kinds of things, okay? I get annoyed by food labels where they're lying to you and they've got 67 or whatever names for sugar when they should just call it sugar. But they're just trying to deceive you and poison you with more sugar. And don't get me wrong, I love sugar, but it's still a scam. So I just don't like the scammy part of it. If I want to eat some sugar, just call it sugar and I'll eat it anyway, okay? Because it's addictive. And I'm addicted to it just like anybody else, right? Okay, so it amazes me when people use these acronyms And they assume everybody knows what they mean. I have been in real estate for a long time. I have negotiated many, many commercial property leases. Of course, I've done a ton of work in residential and had hundreds of tenants and owned properties in 11 states and all that kind of stuff, right? So I have a long resume. But believe it or not, I did not know what that acronym was, CBD. I thought it was the marijuana thing, right? Like CBD oils that you keep reading about and hearing about. No, CBD stands for Central Business District. Nowhere in this article does it say what that means. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Ugh. Annoying. #annoying. Okay, so anyway, the article goes on to say, as the pandemic rages on both companies and their employees, they are looking to the suburbs for salvation. The theory being that wider spaces in these city outskirts will make social distancing that much easier. By the way, that's not a theory, it's a fact. Okay, but you can still call it a theory if you wish. As a result, companies are dusting off playbooks to reconsider the hub and spoke site selection model, meaning of their offices. Not just for their own corporate purposes, but also to accommodate their employees. By the way, this is a better deal for everybody because the office space in the burbs is a lot less expensive than in the city, and so is the housing, so they can afford to be way more competitive, offering even lower wages to people living in the suburbs, because if their cost of living isn't as high, then the benefit of that bargain accrues to both parties, the company and the employee. Just like doing business in a business-friendly state that's less expensive to operate in. You can pay your employees less and they can still have a great life. So that's the thing. Well, this trend is real. It would be a mistake to think that it kicked off with COVID-19. A new report by Cushman Wakefield makes the case that the rebirth of the suburbs was well underway before the pandemic. Instead, the coronavirus accelerated the process that had already started. I agree with him. The coronavirus has accelerated a whole lot of things, a lot of technologies, a lot of adoption of technology, and the move to the suburbs. So the article basically goes on to talk about something that we've reported on over the years, that millennials are obviously moving into their housing formation stage of their life because they're getting older. Hey, the oldest millennial's about 40 years old this year, right? So they're not kids anymore, even though some of them are woke and clueless, and not all of them, but, a lot of them. Remember, the millennials are the first most brainwashed generation. They've been brainwashed with the woke elitist school system and the woke elitist university government debt enslavement complex. By the way, did you see the ridiculous thing that even if you go to Harvard remotely and you're looking at a screen on your laptop, you have to pay $48,000 to go to Harvard this fall? Unbelievable. What a complete scam. That is a scam. And why is it that Harvard has this multi-zillion dollar endowment and they have tax-free status? This is insanity that we allow these universities to just rob us. They are robbing a whole generation of young people from their future. They are requiring them to have a mortgage without getting a house included. It is ridiculous. This student loan scam is ridiculous. Do you know that one professor at Harvard, say, take economics, for example, one economics professor could teach economics to the entire planet Earth? Everybody in the human race could learn economics from one professor. And they could charge each student $1 to attend and get a college degree. That's the way it should be. Technology has lowered the cost of almost everything except things where they have a fake iron triangle monopoly, like the college government debt enslavement complex. This is a massive, massive scam. And at the same time, these universities are brainwashing people. It's like this elitist brainwashing scam. Don't get me started. I get annoyed by everything, don't I? Yes, I do. But it's good to be annoyed, because if you're not annoyed and dissatisfied about something, then nothing ever changes. Okay? It's not so bad. Join me in your annoyance. I'm actually quite a happy, jovial person. Well, sometimes, but then I get annoyed. Okay, so anyway, the point is the suburban trend was already there and COVID accelerated it. Yes, that's the point of the article. That's the upshot. It's all you need to know. So go look at those suburban properties at jasonhartman.com/properties. And while you're there, get a ticket at jasonhartman.com/masters for upcoming Meet the Masters. Let's get to part 2 and talk to the professor and learn a little bit more about another viewpoint on Marxism. So where do we go from here? I think we'd all agree that things are pretty messed up unless you're Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, whatever. We would all agree that it's, and in Lou Dobbs' book, which I quote often, War on the Middle Class from years ago, he talks about how the rank and file worker versus the C-level execs, the pay, it's astronomical how out of proportion that is nowadays compared to how it was years ago. I mean, it was in line. The head honcho always gets paid more. We get that, right? Nobody would object to that in principle, but the proportion is staggering. What Jamie Dimon makes versus one of his serfs, right? So how do we solve that? I mean, we got to redistribute wealth, right? That's the only way you do it.
A few months ago, maybe it's a year ago, I was on a Fox News town hall, and they had 2 of us on the sort of the left, and then they had their 4 big shots on the right, one of which was Lou Dobbs. Mm-hmm. And after it lasted an hour, the show. After the show was over, Lou Dobbs was eager to talk to me, which I found interesting. Okay.
Yeah, Lou Dobbs would not disagree with you completely. I mean,
he was taken with, obviously, and he was very friendly and all that. But that's what he wanted to talk about. Yeah. He and I both, I think I had made some comment about how back in the 1960s, the CEO got 50 or 60 times.
Yeah, now it's like 400 times. It's
that's
absurd.
Right. 300 or 400 is where it is now. And there's no rational basis.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to argue he's that much more productive. I mean, it's just silly. And he and I agreed on that. And I said to him, if you had a democratic way of deciding on salaries, the workers themselves could be counted on to pay more to people they thought were more crucial to what the company did, had maybe some skills, had to go learn for a while in the university to acquire. They wouldn't give everybody the same amount of money. They get that.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. Yeah, no, and I agree that they do get that. Yeah.
And he looked at me with this funny look. Mm-hmm. I don't want to put words in his mouth. Mm-hmm. He didn't comment on what I was saying one way or the other. But, being a teacher all my life, I look at the student's eyes. I looked at his eyes. I don't mean this to be critical because I had a nice talk with him. Mm-hmm. I don't think he had ever thought of it that way. I mean, when he asks himself the question.
Well, that's the co-op idea, right? The company, the employee-owned company concept, right?
But no, not ownership.
Okay.
When I say co-op, I'm talking about what the better word would be directorship. Mm-hmm. The workers become collectively their own employer, their own board of directors. Mm-hmm. This is complete. You can have an employee stock ownership plan, and we have many of those in this country.
Sure.
Where workers get, X% of the shares or something like that. The problem with that is, whatever you think of it per se, is that the workers are usually either in fact incompetent or unsure of how to run a company. So what they do as owners is the same thing anybody does as owners. You basically vote for, turn over the company to your delegates, your board of directors that you elect each year.
It's a representative republic concept.
That's right. And so they do that too. And then what they look at the shares, the way most small shareholders do, this is a source of a quarterly check. But beyond that, I don't give a damn. I don't know what's going on in the company. I'm not involved.
Yeah.
I bought it because my broker told me it was a good deal, something like that. So I'm talking about when workers literally become the collective directors, designers. They run their own business. They don't even have to own it.
Can a company with 80,000 workers really do that? Is everything voted on? I mean,
sure.
The problem is in those employee stock-owned companies that you mentioned a moment ago, we have that all over the place. And because of the separation of the C-level executives and the boards of directors and what's known in law as the business judgment rule, it's like Congress. They can just give themselves perks endlessly and, there's no accountability for that. Yeah, they could maybe vote them out, but that's harder than it looks. So how do we do that? What's the real mechanics of that?
Let me answer it by describing to you a company that has done it, so that we don't have it in the realm of me. I don't want people to imagine I'm suggesting how it could be done.
Okay.
I prefer to be the messenger who tells you how it's already being done.
All right.
Probably the single most powerful and successful worker co-op in the world is called the Mondragon Corporation. It's based in Spain and in the city of Mondragon, which is a small city in the north of Spain in the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains. In 1956, a Catholic priest gave a famous talk in a little church in Mondragon, and he said to the workers there, very, very poor part of Spain, if we wait for someone to come here and give us jobs, we will all die of old age before that happens. And everybody laughed. And then he made his pitch. He said, let's become our own employer. There are 6 of you in this room who are carpenters or whatever the hell they were. Let's start a co-op. We will employ ourselves. So he starts in 1956 with 6 workers and the Catholic priest. Today, that company has about 130,000 employees. It is the 7th largest corporation in all of Spain. It is organized as a family of about 200 or 250 individual worker co-ops doing manufacturing, services, a whole range of activities. And they organize each of those businesses as a worker co-op, where all the decisions are made collectively by the 50, the 500, the 10,000 employees, depending on what it is. Give you an idea of how they've succeeded. 6 people in 1956, 130,000. That would be the envy of any capitalist corporation, such a level of growth. Mm-hmm. Number 2, along the way, they competed with many capitalist enterprises, and they outcompeted them, eventually ended up absorbing them, their workers, their used materials, their equipment. Number 3, they have a rule that the highest paid worker in a co-op across the 130,000 cannot get paid more than 8.5 times what the lowest paid was. They have no inequality like the United States in those parts of Spain, mostly in the north where they are located. Okay? Once a year, they have an assembly where the workers vote on the supervisors, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. The workers vote whether to retain a supervisor or to let him or her go. Mm-hmm. It's an extraordinary development. I have gone there myself, so I'm not only talking about reading about it and all that. I visited the place. It blows my mind. Very well organized.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's great.
There it is. It's doable.
Okay, so I've got to ask you, though. When I asked you the question a moment ago, where do we go from here? We've got this, as people, especially on the left, like to talk about, this wealth inequality gap. And I don't disagree with it. It's, and it's not just like inequality. It's much more nuanced and complicated because, it's this percentile and that percent, it's very complex, right? But the fact is, the rich have become ultra mega rich. And I saw you on the interview with Stuart Varney, and you were saying, Jeff Bezos is giving away some money. That's a drop in the bucket. Bezos has got to be the least charitable Scrooge of any. I mean, he is so wealthy. Now, Bill Gates is like the opposite end of the spectrum. He's got his agenda too. But whatever, at least he and Buffett are actually doing something philanthropic for real. But Bezos is, it's like a trinket, okay? Right. And it took him forever to get around to it, by the way, too. Right. So, I'm pretty critical of Bezos. He treats his workers like crap. It's, what do you do? The only power that has that is able to change anything like this is government. Government has to say, there's a law, and hey, Jeff, if you don't do this co-op thing, or if you don't give some of your money away, here's a gun and a jail cell. That's it. That's what a law is, right? So what do we do? Where do we go from here?
Well, you have to look, for me, I've always had this disagreement with my libertarian friends. Mm-hmm. I understand that the government, in my view, the government is complicit with big business. And it has been for a long time. And I understand why. If you're going to have a tiny group of people sitting at the top of society with the kind of obscene wealth you and I agree they have, if they're stupid, they will imagine that that's something they can simply assume will last for a long time. But I don't think they're stupid. I think they understand they have a problem. If you're going to be wildly rich in a society that allows universal suffrage, everybody gets a vote, then you have a risk. And the risk is that the mass of people who are being screwed by you,
they'll get the pitchforks eventually. You know, we have this plutocracy or kleptocracy now, and
before they get the pitchforks, they have the vote, and they can use the vote to undo the economic consequences of what the rich are arranging for themselves. So the rich have understood. And I know this because I'm among the people that are occasionally approached by them for advice. Mm-hmm. They have understood they have to manage the political system or else it will undo them.
So they hire an army of lobbyists, which is much more powerful than our votes.
That's right. And so for me, the only solution is you have to mobilize the working class of people, those who are excluded from this wealth, those who are excluded from the role of the employer, and say to them, you have to organize yourself, you have to mobilize yourself, then and only then will you be able to shape what the government does so it can do the kinds of things you and I might agree would be good for the government to do.
What does that look like? Does that look like a labor union? Does it look like Elizabeth Warren? What does it look like?
Well,
or nothing we've seen?
No, it could be something new. I'll give you in a minute an example of something that might be the beginning. Traditionally, in the last 150 years of capitalism, it has basically taken two parts, two forms: labor union, organized labor, and political parties, labor parties, socialist parties, communist, all of that.
Yeah.
It's taken those two. Now, there is something which I find very interesting called the Yellow Vest movement in France over the last year and a half, which is neither. It's not a union. It's not a political party. Its leadership is very determined not to do that, but it wants to constitute itself as an ongoing social change engine. And in France at least, and granted France has its particulars, but in France at least it is stunningly powerful. It has endured now for a year and a half, which is itself a major achievement. It is constantly approached by the unions and the political parties. By the way, not only on the left, although it's mostly the left, Marine Le Pen, which is the far right in France, also is trying to get a place in the Yellow Vest. So they keep all of them at bay. They don't exclude them, but they do not let them take over, which is in a way what they want. So you may be seeing there the beginnings of another form in which, but the success of the Yellow Vests, I think, is what you're talking about, because despite having no infrastructure, no treasury, no accumulated cells, and all the rest of it, they were able to mobilize people in France to the envy of both the labor movement and the left political parties in terms of the number of people, the commitment, etc. So that's right now in process. They've been quiet because they can't get together because of the corona, but France is now opening up faster than the United States, and so we may re-see that. But I see a variety of efforts. I see them coming in this country as well, to try to figure out how to mobilize and organize the mass of people, because I think everyone recognized that's the only hope to have some real change. Otherwise, whether we have a Trump or a Biden, neither of them is going to change any of this.
Well, that I agree with. It's just moving the needle a little bit. There's no dramatic change. Yeah, interesting.
No.
Well, Richard, give out your website, your capitalist website.
Yes. We have 2 websites, and we also are, you can
and
find
why aren't
us,
your books free? Why are your books free?
I wish. On YouTube, you can find us at Democracy at Work. That's our channel on the YouTube. We have a weekly radio and TV show every week for half an hour. It's been going for a decade.
Yeah, 90,000 subscribers. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, 150. 150.
Oh, well, I'm looking at Richard D. Wolff. Maybe that's a different channel. Okay.
Yeah, different channel. Yeah, Democracy at Work is the one you want to look at.
Okay.
Our website is Democracy at Work. Again, all one word, democracyatwork.info. And you can also find me at RD Wolff with 2 Fs at .com, and that will be the easiest way. And we welcome people to look at all this stuff, to communicate with us. We have a very active Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we're doing it.
Good stuff.
And here's the best part that you might be intrigued. I've been a critic of capitalism pretty much my adult life. Over the last 10 years, I have done more invited public speaking than in the previous 40. The United States has become open and interested in these critiques in a way I never thought I would live to see. So you're talking to a person who is being carried along by a current that is very strong, that I did not think would last, but it has. It's a heady time for people like me. We're back in the political reality and conversations of America in a way we haven't seen for a long time.
Well, that's what happens when American workers don't get a pay raise for 4 decades. Okay.
That's right.
And listen, I don't agree with you in the sense that I like capitalism. I just don't think we have capitalism, but the Soviets could argue I like Marxism, but we don't have Marxism. So I get it. This is very nuanced. There's a lot to it, obviously. Right. But Richard, very interesting. Yes, the millennials, they definitely they lean socialist, they lean modern monetary theory and all that kind of stuff, which, I'm sure there's a big demand, like you said, for you. So good stuff. Thanks for joining us today, folks. That's Richard D. Wolff. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to doing this again because our conversations should be part of what the evolution of our society now needs and will benefit from.
Workers the world unite.
Absolutely.
Never thought I'd say that on the show. Thanks,
Good.
Richard. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.